go to war with the army that you have and not the one that you want. And in any situation when you lose a system or you lose a part of your unit or you lose communication, it's always what's the next best thing. Army life is pretty much 6 to 6. So I would do my training in the morning with my unit, a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours at night. If I wasn't out in the field doing army training, I was driving to competition, sleep in the car, wake up, go compete, and just like try to cut costs and save as much money as possible. Then drive back after the event was done on Sunday to make it back for work at 06 on Monday morning.
What's the difference between good and great?
You don't have to turn off. If I'm not studying, I could be practicing my push-ups and sit-ups. If I'm not practicing my push-ups and sit-ups, I could be learning about how to better execute battle drill 6. There's always something to be done. When you're conducting a defensive operation, you never stop improving your position. So I think it's just the intentionality to always be on for the thing that you're trying to do.
Welcome back to Mulligan Brothers Interviews, and today I sit down with Chandler Smith and we talk all things CrossFit, we talk about the military, we talk about the health crisis that is striking America right now and how it's actually a massive security threat right now. Today's episode, as always, is supported by Marek Health. I'll talk about them a little bit later on in the video. I want to say a massive thank you to all our Patreon supporters. If you want exclusive behind the scenes, extended cuts of interviews like this and much, much more, head to the link in the description where you can sign up for free or you can get a discount with the current offer available. Let's dive into this amazing episode.
We just usually start the video, just introduce yourself and what you do.
I'm Chandler Smith and I'm a professional fitness athlete.
We have like a American audience, we have a US audience, a UK audience, we have Australians here. Where did you grow up and how would you describe that to somebody who maybe is from the UK or Australia?
I am originally from Kansas City. I grew up a little bit of everywhere, but how I would describe that to people is it'd be Alice Springs if you're in Australia. I think that's middle of nowhere there. I think maybe like we're talking Leeds or like kind of middle of nowhere for what I know of England. Maybe if you watch Newcastle could also be thinking weather-wise, not really, but as far as just being in the middle, like kind of in between all the big stuff on either end. So not the most poppin' city, but we do really good barbecue. So if you're ever in the USA and you want some good barbecue, come to Kansas City.
Wow, what was your childhood like? Like typical childhood? Or?
Childhood was not typical. So my dad was a professional football player. He played in the NFL for like 6-7 years while I was growing up. And then he's been an NFL strength conditioning coach since then. So I always grew up around sport. I'm the oldest of 3 brothers and we grew up every Sunday was a football game and, you know, had ambitions of that myself. We moved a lot because as a player or coach, you're either getting cut or fired all the time. And so bounced around a little bit, but went to high school in Kansas City and that feels like home still.
Wow, okay. So yeah, I didn't get that in research. Like I said before, like usually we'd have like a week or so, like this happened quite fast. So like, I knew that we were just gonna have a conversation on camera. So this is even more interesting to me. Usually I kind of ask like where your mindset, mentality and all that kind of stuff come from. I'm interested, like how much was you inspired by seeing your father? Like, was he talking to you about athletics, performance, discipline, all that kind of stuff? Or
just talking earlier today about how you catch things more than like they're taught. It's caught more than it's taught. And so watching him I got to be a ball boy for the Broncos and my dad was coaching with the Broncos. That was a super like formative experience because I got to watch the players and how they train. I got to wake up early with my dad and train and go to work. And all of that kind of contributed to me realizing pretty early on what it would take to be a professional athlete. And I think most kids, you know, at some point have that as a dream. Like I want to go compete and do this. And I didn't grow enough to make it to the NFL, but I learned what the work was. So once I started wrestling, I was able to kind of apply those concepts and spend the same stuff that's kept me in the game for this stuff now.
Was there a story that resonated, like maybe like seeing your dad work at a certain time or put in a certain amount of work, or a certain athlete maybe you'd seen being a ball boy that like you're like, wow, that really has inspired me?
One of the years all the ball boys, you know, you form relationships with the players, and it was Jerry Rice's last season. And Jerry Rice is probably like a top 3 all-time American football player. And I got to watch him, even at 43 years old, the discipline with which he was, you know, doing training or recovering after practice, or how direct and precise he was with doing all the little things. And I knew him more than I knew all the other athletes. So I was very, very intent in watching him. And that was a super intense experience. And I also think about my dad in the off season, maybe training some of the local folks when he wasn't training the players on the team. And I would hop in and do these sessions with, guys who were getting ready to try out go to the combine or try out for a pro team or whatever. And the insistence on making sure that drills were done right and just paying attention to the little things that kind of stuck with me. So early on, I, established a pretty high standard of what good training constituted. And, if you don't do it right, then you do it again type attitude. And that always kind of stuck with me.
When you're in a professional setting, you're seeing these people who have dedicated their lives to this, to pro sport, but then there's that step up, the Jerry Rice step up, the legends. What's the difference between good and great?
I think the difference between good and great is seen in your mental approach towards things and how holistic your focus on becoming great is. Like it has to become an all-consuming thing. And from a mental perspective, those folks who are great rather than the ones who are good, they never are taking every single action is done through the lens of, is this making me better at this thing? So small things like how quickly you're intent on getting food in after training. I've seen it in CrossFit, I saw it in football, or how when you go to sleep, what you do before you sleep, it can be a 24/7 thing. And I think over time, the compounding effect of being fully in versus being in for 23 hours of the day, that is what separates, good from great. Because I think there's a lot of folks with the physical talent and skills to go and be very successful, but the folks who have the ability to stay mentally switched on, where they're never taking steps backwards, they're not drinking, they're not putting crazy stuff in their body or whatever it is, like those folks over time, that's where the separation occurs. But it has to be a mental approach where you don't ever give yourself a break. I mean, there's times to rest, but when you're resting intentionally. So I think it's just the intentionality and having the mental focus to always be on for the thing that you're trying to do.
Yeah, those tiny, minute details like that make up that 100% is overlooked massively. And I think people think they can get away with just doing a great workout or putting in a great hour in the gym, but like the difference is those tiny little things.
Absolutely.
I'm guessing you was playing a bit of football, but wrestling became more of a thing.
Yeah, so in high school, I went to a big football high school, and for those who aren't American, like American high school football is almost like a religion for some people. And the school I went to, it was very similar to that. But I was 5'2", and I wrestled 125, 130 pounds my freshman year. So I was a small kid. And I wanted to play basketball after football season, but if you're 5'2", there's not a lot of spots for you on the basketball team. So ended up going out for wrestling and meeting a lot of really great folks who started pushing me. They showed me what hard work looked like from a conditioning perspective. I think I'd understood it from a discipline or strength training perspective, but I'd never really done any sports that required conditioning before wrestling. And we had a great coach who was an ex-West Point wrestler, which ended up being the school I went to. We had a team captain who ended up going to West Point as well. These guys understood the military mindset and approach to training, and having those guys imprint upon me what I was capable of doing from a conditioning standpoint really directed me into a very good trajectory where I was able to become a good wrestler despite starting late, because I knew how to strength train and condition, and also kind of started directing me towards wanting to go to West Point specifically. It's something I'd already been thinking about, but those guys kind of brought it home for me, and that became my main goal.
The military, like you just said, the military mindset, where's the overlap happen? So you've got wrestling, military career, and CrossFit. Did they all happen at similar times?
Yeah, so actually they all kind of work in tandem. So I wrestled, and as part of wrestling, especially my senior year, I was in a position where I was hoping to become a state champion. And so I also was looking to go to West Point as a college. And so I was looking up training on Google, and I saw some videos of guys doing CrossFit and doing some snatches and stuff. And I was like, that's pretty cool. I think I'd searched up military training and CrossFit to come up. So I started training CrossFit to prep for my senior year of wrestling, and also to prep for hopefully getting into West Point. And I got into West Point, I walked onto the wrestling team, and continued to use CrossFit to train for wrestling for my 4 years at university, and got good enough where once I graduated, I knew I wanted to shift focus into trying to become a professional CrossFitter, fitness athlete afterwards.
Okay, and then your military career, what does that look like? What was the sort of lean towards the military as well? Is it something that was in the family already, or?
Yeah, actually, a lot of my family on both sides were a lot of my family on both sides were in the military, so I knew that was important. None of them had been officers, and the draw to West Point came in a couple ways. Like, for one, the year that I was getting ready to start applying to schools was the best school in the country, and I wanted to challenge myself from an academic standpoint. But once I'd visited, I learned that there was also military and academic rankings that were going on as well, and military and physical rankings in addition to the academic rankings. And I was like, well, this place is going to test me across all areas versus going to, some other fancy school, some other highly regarded school where I'm only going to be tested academically. I wanted to grow completely. So ended up deciding to go there. And after you do your 4 years at West Point, you graduate and you commission as a second lieutenant, and a lieutenant or lieutenant, as folks in the United Kingdom would say, like, you're immediately put in charge of a group of people, and you got to learn some life lessons really quickly because you're a 22-year-old kid in charge of, people with families and kids and all this sorts of stuff. So it makes you grow up and mature a little bit pretty quickly. So I did 6 years of time in the Army, and everything's always kind of transitioning to the next thing. Towards the end, I qualified for my first CrossFit Games in 2019 when I was at a captain's career course, and I'd done enough in the fitness space where the Army realized like I could be used as a recruiting asset. So for my last couple of years in the Army, I just was doing exercise as part of a recruiting command, which then set me up to go professionally into the fitness world.
Wow. So could you talk us through the schooling? Because I think it's just from a UK perspective, I don't think we have sort of some schooling systems similar, but I don't think it's the same kind of thing. So you go in, you're doing the athletic side, the wrestling side. Is that so? And you walked on in wrestling.
Yes. Yeah.
So that means you're paying for school at this point?
So everybody at West Point, it's pretty easy to walk on at West Point because nobody's on scholarship. Like, you're not,
right, okay.
Everyone there is getting paid a small stipend to be there. So you don't have to worry about, paying for things. But yeah, I walked on to the wrestling team because I'd gotten in separately of that. And from there, it's close to Sandhurst is the UK equivalent, but Sandhurst it's totally military focused. It's 2 years and it's all military focused. Like, you can pursue all sorts of majors. I got a double major in school. And we also have like an engineering focus where we all have to do some engineering as well. So I do environmental engineering classes, my poli-sci classes, my Latin American study classes, and also wrestling, also doing your military job. They throw a lot on your plate, but it's to help you be prepared for the craziness of Army life and the amount of responsibility you have immediately, when you become a lieutenant. You got to balance a lot of competing demands in the Army, but it's relatively easy once you've gone through what school asks you to do.
What does the physical side of the Army training and like the tests look like?
Okay, so when I was in, the Army switched their test within the last 5 years. Like, right as I was getting out, they switched their test to Army Combat Fitness Test, which is a 6-event test. For the majority of time where I was in, 9 out of the 10 years, we had Army Physical Fitness Test, which is 2 minutes push-ups, 2 minutes sit-ups, 2-mile run. So you get a grade from that. You get a grade from wrestling. So my coach would put in a grade for me. We had some academic classes about programming progressions, because you're also responsible as a lieutenant for writing the workouts for your unit. And then we also had a slate of classes at West Point that you had to do. So we had a swimming class. We had a boxing class. There's a combatives, think like jiu-jitsu sort of class. There was a lifetime sport class where I did some more lifting. Just they throw all sorts of stuff at you because the whole goal is for you to be so well-rounded that you can have the base to deal with any sort of situation, whether that's physically. There's a military movement class where you learn some basic gymnastics and like how to traverse through things with equipment and all that sort of stuff. It's all very comprehensive. There's a huge slate of tests from really short burst of power to longer duration ruck marches and things like that. But it helps prepare you for wrestling. So I think it was an advantage for wrestling. And I think both of those things also work together to prepare me for what I've done and what I do now, because CrossFit throws all sorts of things at you. High Rocks throws all sorts of challenges at you. And I've done some jiu-jitsu and fighting and all sorts of things, but all that base was built at school because they exposed me to everything.
Was there anything where you had a benefit from your CrossFit training where you was extremely fit in the testing?
Yeah, so we had what's called the IOCT at West Point. It's the indoor obstacle course test, and it's basically a 2-minute obstacle course. If you go fast, it's a 2-minute obstacle course. And every year people race to see who can get like the best time in their class. And I was working really hard at school to try to be, because there's a physical ranking, I wanted to graduate first in my class physically. I ended up graduating second. Huge regret, but no big deal. But one of the things I wanted to do was have the best IOCT time in my class. And so you start off, there's a low crawl, you run through some tires, you jump over a vault, you climb up a shelf, you do like a sideways reverse. There's a whole thing. I could do it like in my sleep. I could still walk my way through it. But that was one, I think, that prepared me, CrossFit specifically prepared me for my training there, because it's a very similar time domain to a workout like Fran or something. And also that 2-minute time frame is a wrestling period. There's 3 periods in a wrestling match, and it goes 3 minutes for the first period and then 2 minutes for the second and 2 minutes for the third. So I was very used to working in these 2-minute bursts. So again, like I've always been very lucky that all of these things, the military training and the IOCT, supported that 2-minute time domain, which helped me for CrossFit to do things like Fran, which helped me make it through a wrestling period. And everything has always kind of been working together, which has been awesome.
When you talk about military mindset, I think that's something that we've spoken about. It's a lot of the guys on the channel speak about to our audience. Like, how would you describe the military mindset?
I think the military mindset is finding a way to make the best out of whatever situation you're presented with. One of the sayings that I say way too much, so I'm probably sorry for double tapping on this if I've already said it, but it's like you go to war with the army that you have and not the one that you want. And it's basically accepting that there's a set of conditions that you are unable to change in any circumstance. Like maybe the guy next to me, maybe I'm doing a workout next to Noah Olson and it's 30 muscle-ups per time and he can do them without coming off the rings and I'm gonna have to come off the rings. I can't change that. So then what can I do with the variables that I can control? And in any situation when, you know, you lose a system or you lose a part of your unit or you lose communication, it's always what's the next best thing. And that approach towards exercise is super useful because things are always changing. You have a goal to, you know, hit 3 stone lifts in 30 seconds and all of a sudden 30 seconds pass and you've only done 2. Okay, now the goal is 45 seconds and you make a new plan. But that ability to make a new plan on the fly and not be worried when things change is, I think, the baseline of it. Like there's no time to make excuses. There's a job that has to be done. And when you can't do the job according to plan, you make a new plan and execute to the best of your ability there.
I think it's so applicable to life as well, identifying the things that you can't change, identify the things that you can and work with what you got. And I think so many people get stuck on the things that they can't change and start to lose time and decisions around all these things that are just out of our control instead of dealing with what did you say, the military we got in front of us or the...
Oh, no, yeah, it's you go to war with the army that you have and not the one that you want.
Love that. That's so amazing. Okay, wow. Do you remember when you first served or like your first experience of war or being in the military that was like, was it a shock? Was it?
Yeah, so cadet basic training is a little bit easier than regular basic training, but they still, you know, work pretty hard to let you know very quickly that you're no longer in civilian world. You'll get yelled at and you got to eat really fast and all these sorts of, you sleep outside and all these things maybe that like you weren't fully expecting happen to you a lot more quickly. At West Point specifically, your freshman year, there's a lot of weird rules and regulations you have to follow that are just meant to not just build discipline, but to create a presence of mind, that 24/7 presence of mind that I was talking about that separates good from great in athletes, I think is also present in the military because we frequently talk about the military as a profession. And the distinguishing feature of a profession is that you're on 24/7 as a member of a profession. Like you could always be studying more. If you're a doctor, there's always new information to learn. If you're a lawyer, there's always like new cases to get caught up on. And they want us to view being an officer in a similar way. It's never a job. When I am a U.S. Army captain, even if I'm on leave, if a war started, then I'm getting called back and we're going to war. There's never a time where I can fully disassociate from my responsibilities. And I know I definitely view being an athlete that same way, but at West Point, when they're drilling that into you your freshman year, you can't talk outside. And, you know, it's the most natural thing in the world to talk or see a friend and want to speak, but you have to shut off all of these things that you think are natural and become what they're expecting you to be from a discipline standpoint. But once you realize how much capacity you have to use discipline to reach a endpoint or to do things that you would have thought were impossible, then you're able to accomplish a lot because you're like, actually, I have all the time in the world. I have 24 hours in the day to move myself towards this goal or to execute and living up to the standard of what it means to be a West Point fourth class cadet. And if I apply that to other things with that fully focused single-mindedness, I can get a lot of great things done.
Yeah, I hope some people can take that away. So what's the key points of those important things you learned, like discipline, I don't know, being on time, all these kind of things? Like, what were the things that really stood out to you as like, these are the things that I've carried forward into my CrossFit career and into my business and all that kind of stuff? Like, are there things that you can see and circle on, like, yeah, those things lasted and have stayed?
I think because West Point specifically is testing you comprehensively in the physical, military, and academic setting, I learned that I'm capable, and I saw it from other people who showed me the example, that you don't have to turn off. Like, there is a time 100% to rest, but I could also be locked in for weeks, months at a time. Your freshman year, you get one pass a semester, which means like you can leave campus, but you're stuck on campus most of the time, not being able to talk outside, having to eat your meals a certain type of way, all those things. And you make it. So then you're like, wait a minute, I can apply this towards everything I want to do. If I'm not studying, I could be practicing my push-ups and sit-ups. If I'm not practicing my push-ups and sit-ups, I could be learning about how to better execute battle drill 6 or whatever. Like there's always something to be done. And that's another thing that we talked about a lot, especially in the branch that I was in, which was armor. We talk about when you're conducting a defensive operation, you never stop improving your position. So you might think that you have a good defense set up. You could always rehearse the plan one more time. You could always add a little bit more dirt to make yourself less visible, or whatever the thing is. There's always something to be done. And as the leader, because you're responsible for the outcomes, if you didn't do everything to bring about the outcome that you wanted to, then you can't say that you actually did everything you could. And when the stakes are high enough where you're potentially talking about people's lives, like that's not something to play with. You need to be able to say, I did everything I could to bring somebody home. And if you take that same level of responsibility towards, I did everything I could to being the best fitness athlete I could be, then that's the only way to not have any regrets or feel like you let people that were in your sphere of responsibility down.
I've been getting tons of messages asking about my health protocols ever since I did the world's heaviest marathon. The experience took a toll, and getting back to optimal health has been an absolute journey. That's where Marek Health have been absolutely essential. Their approach is beyond quick fixes. It's about long-term health and performance. They work with medical professionals to create personalized, evidence-based plans tailored to your needs, using pharmaceutical-grade treatments and cutting-edge diagnosis. Whether it's TRT, peptides, supplements, or like me, getting full health analysis to get you back on track, Marek Health provides everything that you need. And it's not just for athletes. If you're an entrepreneur or businessman like me, you might want that renewed focus, clarity, and energy. That's when Marek Health can get your brain performing at its peak. From comprehensive blood work to customized health plans, Marek gives you the tools to optimize your life. If you're ready to take control of your health, go to marekhealth.com and use code Mulligan for 10% off. The link's down below. I can't recommend them enough. And if you just wanted to get started, I would go and get your blood work done. Go get assessed, find out where they can help you. Use the link down below for 10% off using code Mulligan. Let's dive back into the video. What's the recruitment side like when you're probably really fit at that point? You're in your CrossFit at that point, right?
Yeah, when I moved to the recruiting side.
What does that look like? Like, obviously this extremely fit guy doing recruitment and fitness. Like, was it unheard of? Was a situation seen like that before? Or
I think the recruiting side of things was something the Army has done before. In the Captain America movie, I would always explain to people, like,
I was about to say, that's what it kind of reminds me of.
Yeah, it's kind of it was similar to that. We went around and got people excited about it, but especially in America, there's a little bit of a public health and fitness crisis, so it's tougher to find, identify, and recruit people who are physically fit enough to go and do well in the Army. So by going to these fitness events where there's a high concentration of people, men and women who are fit enough to meet the Army standards, we were getting better recruits. And by going and kicking people's butt there, they were like, oh, like, I can join and I'll be kicked butt. It's the same as any sort of recruiting. And we had several arms with which we did that. There was an Army esports team, there's Army band. They move in all sorts of different areas. Like, you are just always trying to recruit talented folks, because the ability to be talented in one space, just like with your career previous to this, like that same work ethic and drive that you brought towards learning how to master your body is like what you've done with learning how to master delivering and making great content like this. And so we're just trying to find high performers and get them into the Army, because very likely, even if they didn't know how to drive a tank or to fly a helicopter, if they knew how to work really hard and learn and acquire new skills, we could probably teach them.
Wow, yeah, I love that mentality. Is it actually becoming is it a concern in terms of the US that there is unhealthy population that makes it difficult to recruit?
Yes, it's definitely a national security concern. There was a general who was a swimmer at West Point. I remember seeing this quote everywhere. I think this was like back in 2006. He'd said something about how, if 50% of the population is obese, then and there's maybe a disqualifying condition, then that is going to reduce the total volume of people that you could recruit from, and the smaller pool for any sport or force, the less likely you are to get the best applicants. So if we had 100% healthy people, then we've got 340 million people to recruit from, versus if we only have 50% of people who are candidates, and we only have 170 million to recruit from, and you're just unlikely to get the same quality of people. So it's a bit of a concern, but hopefully we're moving in the right direction there.
When you say it, I didn't even think about that, that obesity could be a national security risk, but you've lost half the population to be able to recruit from instant. I never thought of that. I've never even heard anyone speak about it, to be honest.
Yeah, I think everything is viewed through when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And from the Army perspective, everything is how is this helping or hurting our ability to fight and win our nation's wars? So from obesity to education, there's always a lens, a defense-oriented lens. And I still, even as a civilian for the last 3-4 years, I still look at a lot of problems like that. But for that one specifically, I still am pretty passionate about it. And I think I really think that part of my job as an athlete is important to, either teach or show people what's possible from a fitness perspective. So that way they're maybe encouraged to go pursue it themselves, because that has a knock-on effect for the people around them as well.
Yeah, I mean, the population being healthy in general is just good anyway, for multiple reasons. But I think individually to people's lives, it's life-changing, to be able to feel fit, to feel healthy, to be there for your children, just to feel good. Nobody, I've been big, it's not nice. It doesn't feel great. So being morbidly obese for a large portion of your life, I can't imagine is the best feeling in the world. Let's talk. So you transition into CrossFit. When did you get to CrossFit and you're okay, there is something here for me. I have a career in this, or I have a real passion for this.
So I think I first realized that I could maybe think about turning this into a career when I was still in college. And I remember writing down a sheet of paper, and I think it was my Instagram photo for a while. It said Games 2022. It's definitely my phone background for a while. And this was in 2012. And I just copied the crappy Photoshop job and took the twos from the 2012 logo and put it over the one or whatever. It was if I had 10 years, I can learn and acquire new skills in 10 years, kind of that West Point mentality, with enough time, if I direct all my energy that I have available towards this, I can figure it out in 10 years. There was that book at the time that was talking about 10 years and 10,000 hours to become a master. And I was I can become a master. And if master means going to the CrossFit Games, I can figure it out. And so I wrote that down in 2012. And then it wasn't until 2016 when I competed at the regionals and actually met Noah there. I had a couple of moments where I was in the mix with some really, really good athletes. There was a deadlift workout in particular where the defending champion, Ben Smith, and I kind of went down to the wire. And I was working just a regular Army job. I was training after work. I wasn't doing anything special going into that, but had a pretty good weekend. I think finished 9th, but leaving that, I was oh, I can be competitive here. So I started to believe in myself, which is always a, huge marker towards doing anything. If you think you can't do it, or if you think you can, you're probably right. And going forward from 2016, I was pretty sure I could be really, really good and talented, and did some off-season competitions in between my Army time. So, I had a crazy schedule then where Army life is pretty much 6 to 6. So I would do my training in the morning with my unit and then maybe go train after work. I always had a rule I'd stop at 9 o'clock, but I was trained for a couple hours in the morning, a couple hours at night, didn't do anything else, didn't go out, didn't date, didn't really shift my focus anywhere besides competing. And on weekends, sometimes I would rip some crazy drives out to go compete. There was a couple of times where I'd drive through the night, show up at an event and compete, and then drive back after the event was done on Sunday to make it back for work at 06 on Monday morning. And specifically even before that,
through the night,
yeah. And then show up. Not probably great for work performance, but it was the only way to make it to some of these events. And I got a lot of competitions between 2015 and 2016. Those 2 years, I probably competed close to 30 to 40 times. So pretty much a couple times a month. If I wasn't out in the field doing army training or didn't have something else that was blocking me, I was driving to competition, sleep in the car, wake up, go compete, and just like try to cut costs and save as much money as possible so I could hopefully go professional down the road. But that was 2016. 2017 was having a good start to the year. I was on a team that won Wadapalooza, which is a really big event in our space. And I took second at another big event, and I was like, okay, I should probably make CrossFit Games this year. And everything was moving in that direction. And then I had a training accident where I lost a bit of my finger here, which is still gone. The guy threw the thing away. But after that, which had like a little bit of a setback, lose the 2017 season, deployed in 2018, and that kind of slowed things down a little bit, but helped me reset and refocus for everything that came afterwards.
I didn't even notice you'd lost the tip of your finger. How did that happen?
Dropped a piece of a tank on it.
Oh, what?
There's armor on the sides of the tanks, and it's super heavy, and we were moving, and time, pressure, all that sort of stuff led me and the unit to make a mistake, and then the subsequent line of action, which was directly my fault, led to more bad ideas, and we ended up trying to pick up a piece of the tank and dropping it on my finger.
Wow. Okay. Has it obviously affected you immediately, like the recovery? Does it affect you now?
No, I actually, because of the timing of the finger, I missed the 2017 season, but I focused on squatting and running and got pretty good at squatting and running, good enough to where I went from being a pretty good squatter and a pretty good runner to being one of the best in the field at both of those things. I got to work on my grip strength. And because I was deployed in 2018, I spent basically a year and a half just working on kind of weaknesses stuff that I couldn't do or could do because of the finger. And came back a more complete athlete, an athlete with better grip strength. It was one of many, many circumstances where something that felt like a step back actually ended up being a pathway to step forwards.
Where was you deployed?
We did Eastern Europe.
And you were recovering from that, or was that fully recovered at that point?
Maybe, I think it was like 6 months later. So I think things were healed. The train up for it was really bad. I was still having like ghost pains from it and was still pretty shook up. And I remember like I had this like weird tick that I was doing without thinking about it and stuff. So like, for a while I was jacked up, but figured it out and get over it.
Wow. Okay. So then you mentioned manifestation about, well, that's the way I would frame it, manifestation, but it could just be a reminder. But you wrote down your goals, you had it, your screensaver, you had it, on a piece of paper. Where did you learn that from? Like, is that something that came naturally to you and someone spoke to you about like the idea of that?
Yeah, it's a combination. I grew up very religious and still pretty important. I don't talk about it a whole lot, but there was a specific like Bible verse that I remember somebody shared with me when I was in middle school. It's Habakkuk 2, 2, and 3, it's a small book, but basically it was just talking about the power of writing things down. And so even, I think for even like in a non-religious space, like people understand that goal setting is important, but I learned that very early and I wrote down all my goals for high school. And I learned, you don't get all of them, but if I said I wanted to make it to this type of school, or I wanted to get these sorts of grades or do this well in wrestling, and I was like, oh, well, this helped me make all the next steps to reach this thing, because I could learn how to do that. And the Army is very big on like goal setting and medals, measures of performance, measures of effectiveness, everything's always listed. And then we call it nesting, right? So if I have this goal to clean and jerk 300 pounds, okay, well, most people who clean and jerk 300 pounds can back squat 400. So I got to do this. And then to back squat 400, I need to probably weigh 10 more pounds. And you can just break things down into being, into small courses of action that are easy to take. And you do that enough, and eventually you arrive at the end point. So I've been doing that since high school.
Do you remember the Bible verse?
Write the vision down, make it plain on the tablet, so that he who reads it may run from it.
Okay, cool. I'll have to look at that one. Wow. I mean, it's something we've used constantly. And I think the first time I heard about it was Jim Carrey talking about the $10 million check. I don't know if you ever heard of it. He wrote that. He wrote a check for himself for $10 million for acting services rendered. And then I think it was like 5 years later, he got Dumber and Dumber, the film, and got a $10 million check. And it's like this big thing. And I used to, my old bedroom, I wanted to get into the NBA. Like this was like my big dream as a kid. And so I had it painted on the ceiling. I'd have quotes all over the place. And when I'd fall asleep, I'd look at the NBA. And then we've used it constantly throughout. I still use it to this day. Like I have a screensaver it's not at the moment, it's my son at the moment rotates, but I have a BAFTA. Like I really want to win a film BAFTA. It's like a big goal of mine. And I believe like manifesting that is through writing the goals down, putting steps in place. What did you say? It creates like a something around it.
I think it helps you create systems.
Yeah, you start to circle around it. Yeah, and you have to be the person who could win a BAFTA, or be the person, like, so you have to embody that and start.
There's a tool I also remember learning, and it's everything. I knew I was a goal setter, so I would, talk to people who helped me set better goals. But one of the most life-changing ones for me was in college. We had a sports psychologist, Dr. Zinzer, and he had a thing where he had like a doorway theorem. And he was like, every time you walk through a doorway, if you can be present enough to remember that you're walking through a doorway, tell yourself 3 positive things of like what you can do. So all through college, I never try to curse. I'm sorry, Mom. This is maybe the first time on camera that I'll ever curse, but this is what I say. I never quit. I'm strong as shit and I'm really fit. And I would say that every single time I walk through a doorway. And so like when you start to, you brainwash yourself into being like, I won't quit anything ever. No one's going to be stronger than me and I'm really fit. And like you believe it so intently that it actually bears out into when you have a moment when you're maybe lacking some confidence. And I didn't win every single match. Like it didn't turn me into, an absolute incredible monster, but it made me think that I could be that, because that's all I ever told myself that I was.
Wow, I love that tool. Like we walk through doorways all the time. So it's like if you can be present enough, like that's fantastic. When did you get your first big win then in CrossFit? And like, what's the dream now? Like has the mentality shifted? I'm guessing at one point, I was saying this to Noah, like at one point you wanted to qualify. Was there a point where you was like, now I want to win? Like, did it shift for you?
Yeah, definitely shifted. I say this a lot to my wife as a competitor, and we talk about the mental side, since I think that is like the biggest separator for most people. Where I feel if you are training to make the CrossFit Games, you probably won't make it. And if you're training to go do well at the CrossFit Games, there's a chance that you make it. I think everyone's goals and the goals that you set are important, but everyone else also has goals. Like all the competition, the enemy has a plan too, and they get a say. So it's not enough for me to just say I'm going to win and expect to win, because there's 30 other people who are expecting to win. But the person who says who's looking beyond winning, when Matt Fraser was around, he was like, I'm going to dominate. I'm going to win every single event. He might not have won every single event, but he definitely kicked everybody's butts because he had set his goal and his standard beyond just doing the thing. And so I've always thought that was important, of like looking past what you're doing. So I never wanted to go to the CrossFit Games just to get a t-shirt. I wanted to go and do well. And after you go and do well, my first year I took 15th, and then the next year I took 6th, and I was like, okay, I can win. I think I did not train as well for a few years after that. And generally, you run into genetic limits, and even if you did everything right, but you aren't good enough, then you're just not good enough. And over the course of my career, I only went 4 times individually to the games before I stopped competing in CrossFit specifically. But I had 2 top 10 finishes, and especially after 2023, when I finished 7th, after having finished 6th in 2020, I was like, this is probably about as much as I can squeeze out of this. I would love to win the CrossFit Games, but I don't have the frame or desire to reorient my life. I'd gotten married in 2022. I think I realized that I'd come up to the limits of what was possible given what I was currently willing to sacrifice. And that's part of the game too.
I think it's really important for goal setting, the way you've described that. I don't know if you ever listened to Les Brown, but he had a quote, shoot for the moon, because even if you miss, you'll end up in the stars. And I really love that. And I think it's so true. If you're aiming for something, you'll usually fall short of it a little bit. But like, if you can overshoot that, I think, yeah, you might not get where you want it to be, but you'll get where you need it to be. So I like that. The mindset stuff, like I'm interested, like you spoke about a few times, and I think Noah said you're quite interested in that as well. When you're in that dark, the deep pain, like they're really difficult, because these workouts are horrendous. Like it's some of the toughest stuff physically. When you're in that part, what's the internal dialogue that's going on? Like, how are you keeping going? How are you resisting quitting and giving in?
I think I'm able to resist quitting because I have a lot of confidence in the training I've done beforehand. And I place such a high value in how I train on a day-to-day basis, because I don't think I'm uniquely tough or, willing to withstand pain. There's some people who feel that's their advantage. That's not my advantage, but I do feel that if I have controlled all the variables going into it, we're going to we're going to reach the point where we want to quit. Me and my competitor will reach the point that we want to quit at different times if I train better than them. So the only way I have a chance of being in the mix is by beating people through training or having a better plan and having confidence in the plan. So I don't have confidence in myself and like ability to just hurt or suffer through something like that. And I'm definitely good at that, but everyone in CrossFit is good at that. Everyone in any functional fitness or endurance sport is able to have a high degree of suffering. So you have to have something else that sets you apart. And for me, it's that I've done more work before these people coming in. And at the very least, even if I am not able to win, I can trust that the work that I've done was the best that I could do at the time. So I'm going to end up with a result that will leave me confident. And if I'm in so much pain that I have to stop, then somebody else is probably going to have to stop too. Or I'm getting what I earned because maybe I didn't train hard enough to deserve something better. But I have a lot of like, I think internal peace. You might even heard me like today, I talk during the workouts. I very rarely like let things get out of control, but I'm able to use that like control that I have in workouts to help guide my mind and make sure that I'm using my mind as something that's helping my body perform versus something that's, accelerating some sort of negative thinking pattern that's making me less effective at the workout, because mind and body are both working together whenever you're trying to accomplish something.
What's the pain like in the worst sessions? Like, what does it feel like in some of the harder sessions?
The pain is bad, but it's never anything that I haven't felt before in so many ways. I think I'm able to throw perspective on pain in a lot of ways, from whether it's some of the things I had to do in the Army for a staying awake perspective, or how cold and desolate some of these situations I've been in before. There's always a perspective to be added. I can think about how hungry I was cutting weight, or in some circumstances growing up if things weren't good. The workout pain, it's very transient, and this is something, I don't know if this stays in a rule or not, but it's something I thought about a lot. Like previously to the tragedy that happened at last year's CrossFit Games, this was a lot more true. But one of my mentors would always say, like, it's not that serious if you're not getting shot at, like, because nobody dies. But if things aren't that serious if you're getting shot at, and if I was training to a point where I was maybe going to be expected to give my life to protect my country, and what I'm going through right now is feeling some physical discomfort, it stops short of death. So I'm able to, be like, this is bad, but it could be worse. And I think that's also a unique tool, is the amount of perspective I have from having done a whole lot of other things. Yeah, the burpees might stink, but those people have maybe never, let down as many people as I've let down in some other circumstance, or never had to go and give a speech or talk to the president or things, any of the other experiences. I'm able to draw on those experiences, like, this is just exercise, not that serious.
Are you able to speak about the military side of like you say about like the coldness, the staying awake, those kind of torturous things, like that are giving you perspective to understand you can get through these workouts? Like, was there a moment in that was like, wow, this is tough? Like, this is
not so much for me, because I didn't have a ton of those moments because I didn't do any super cool training. I never went to Ranger school. I didn't do anything crazy, but my friends and the Army wrestling team in specific, we have guys who've done all sorts of things, guys who, are like basically like the A-team level of operator. We have Green Berets, Rangers, folks who are Navy SEALs, all that sort of stuff. And so many of those guys, they would come back and validate what we were doing in the wrestling room. They'd be like, hey man, I just finished Buds, and a preseason practice, the preseason ski slope practice is harder than Buds. So if you can make it through whatever you guys are doing right now, I just finished CDQC, and CDQC is not as bad as a Shark Tank round in the wrestling room. So once you make it through this, even if you don't go off and do these other things, like, you're validated, you're tough, you've got like an edge to you that's going to be an advantage. And again, it's like, when you hear enough of that stuff, you start to believe it. And so all of those mentors that I had telling me that I could go do these things that they were able to go do these things that they were able to do because of what had happened in the wrestling room. I knew once I left the wrestling room that I had that sort of capacity, even if I wasn't ever going to be a operator or do some crazy Army stuff, I could take that same approach and ability to outsuffer people from a holistic standpoint of making my whole life oriented towards becoming good at something. I could take that approach and be successful in whatever it was I was going for.
You just mentioned the tragedy at the CrossFit Games. We can take that out if you want. Like, it's completely up to you. I am curious. Is that why you're not pursuing CrossFit now, and that for the rest of your career?
Yeah, probably. There's a lot of venues to do functional fitness stuff. I'm bummed because especially in the last year, I know this is like a classic thing for people to say. Like I think I'm legitimately the fittest I've ever been right now, but I think also that wouldn't have been possible without the tragedy, because I was so frustrated and upset with how things shook out that I was willing to rededicate myself. After 23, I think I mentioned that I felt like I'd kind of capped out. So I did team stuff last year, and maybe it shifted my focus away from just leaning into what's always been my advantage, which is the fact that I will put my whole life to this in a way that I know other people won't or can't or don't. And I was like, I want to move away from this and start thinking about having a family and, just kind of normalizing. I've done my best that I can, but now I'm like, I want to stay in this and continue to show that I am capable and able to do this at a high level, but also provide inspiration for people who I think maybe think similarly, because I know there are people out there who don't maybe feel like they have all of the physical advantages, and they might not have it to go be a, games level competitor, professional athlete, but the power of what consistency and full focus can do applies to any field. So if you just decide that you're going to go be great at something and you really put all your energy for it, even if you don't reach the greatness, you will end up without any regrets. And I think knowing that you can do that and there's a right way to do things, like that's what I stand for. That's my messaging. And I don't want to deprive the space of that, because I like showing that example exists, because I saw it from other people, and that's what set me on the path that I'm on, from my mentors, from the athletes I got to see, from my dad, from my mom. All of that put me in that direction. So if I can help be a part of that story for somebody else, they're going to go off and do awesome things. And I think that makes a better world if there's more people who know what they're capable of.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think it's so important. I think as well is like, there's so many people who fall through the nets who maybe don't have that mentor, don't have a father figure, or, maybe don't feel isolated, or that they can't relate to people. And like people like yourself, they can relate to it. It's like being able to get that message out there is super important. What's the pathway to do that for you? Like, is it high rocks? Have you got anything in mind right now where the pathway is?
Yeah, right now I'm competing in the World Fitness Project, so I'll get the chance to continue to throw down. Honestly, it'll be one of the deepest fields that has ever kind of been put together, so it'll be a really good test. Noah will be out there, and a bunch of our buddies that we've competed against at the CrossFit Games will be there. I've got that. I would like to say it's through high rocks, but I honestly don't have the body composition to probably ever become a full-time world-class high roxer, but it's another venue where there's a lot of people competing, so you get to make those connections. I do affects. I'll probably get back on the mats. I used to do a bunch of jiu-jitsu a couple years ago. There's infinite venues to showcase fitness, and I think for a sport or type of a training methodology that prepares you for everything, that allows me to go into a bunch of different spaces. Since I've made my first games, I got to roll on the mats with Francis Ngannou. I've gotten to run with Olympians. I've got to wrestle with all of these things happened because I had enough fitness to go and do these things. So whether it was training with Lisis in my garage in Kentucky, or doing something else, like I have a base that can get me into a lot of spaces and, forge connections across fitness. Because I don't think there's one supreme type of fitness. Like if you got a body type or you like doing something, go do that thing. Like go chase fitness however you want to. And there's always awareness or connections that can be made between the different groups, because I think we have a tendency to silo ourselves, but we're all going for the same thing, just trying to see what our bodies are capable of in a certain way.
Just a quick interruption for the video, guys. As many of you know, we are independent creators and filmmakers, but there is a massive attack on us right now. Traditional media over the last few years has started to slowly die. They are no longer the independent voice that you first thought they were. That's why we've created Mulligan Brothers Patreon. We've built something special for our most dedicated supporters, and I want to break it down for you real quick. The supporter tier gets you ad-free early access to both video and audio versions of Mulligan Brothers interviews 24 hours before it goes public. The executive tier gets you everything that a supporter tier gets, plus more. Exclusive interviews and behind the scenes content, walk and talks, daily routines, unreleased interviews, the stuff that you don't see anywhere else. And finally, the executive producer tier. Everything from the supporter tier and the executive tier, plus exclusive perks. Access to our treatment packages. Be the first to see which guests are coming up and get insight into the topics we'll be discussing before anyone else. And you'll even get an executive producer credit on every single documentary that we make. So if you've ever wanted to support the Mulligan Brothers mission of inspiring change so we can can go around the world and get these stories that nobody else will, this is exactly how you do it. Go to patreon.com/Mulligan Brothers, or click the link in the description, or scan the QR code on screen. Join the community and help us inspire change. Let's dive back into the video.
There's a few people you just mentioned. I want to pick on a few of them, but if I had to pick one, it'd be Francis. What was rolling with Francis like?
It was super cool. I lucked out. We had the same drink sponsor for a while, and this was when I was really heavy on the mats in 2020. Obviously, everything was going goofy, but I thought I was going to pivot towards doing jiu-jitsu or rolling full-time. I had done the Army's fighting championship in 2018 and won all the matches I had there. So I'm still kind of plugged in. 2017, I did national team camp for Greco-Roman wrestling up in Colorado. So I'd always like kept these skills fresh, but I hadn't, really gone into them. And he was impressive. I will say the most impressive person I ever rolled with was Gordon Ryan. I had the chance to roll with him a couple years ago at my gym in Boston. I was still doing jiu-jitsu, and across the Olympians and national champions and all the people that I've had the chance to grapple with, I've never felt more controlled. Like he was drilling, and I was, even if he had an answer for everything before I did it, which was a really weird feeling to felt like a movie scene when Sherlock Holmes, slows down time and he says, "Oh, right kick" or whatever, and you can kind of see what's happening. That's what it felt like rolling with him. So a bunch of these people that I've had the chance to share the match with, they have those level of skills, but in doing that, you get to learn some more lessons about how they mastered their craft, whether it's from how they move or prepare or execute, and then you're able to take those lessons into what you do. And I think in a sport that's as general as fitness, in a category that's as general as fitness, there's always something I can be taking from people who are specific in their own areas.
On the mindset side, we have a lot of like motivational speakers, speak to a lot of like the special forces guys, SEALs. Is there anyone that you followed like from those kind of spaces? Like, Goggins is another guy who comes up quite a lot as well. Jocko. Like, did you ever follow any of these guys and their messaging and their mentalities and all that kind of stuff? Or
I think those folks in specific like appeal to people who don't know, as they don't have like exposure to people who work like they do. And those guys are obviously world-class workers and focusers, but I never had to go very far for inspiration, because the guys who were seniors on the wrestling team, or every single group, there's a strong tradition from going back to the 1960s. I think about hearing stories about General Mike Nardotti, and then there was the coach I mentioned from West Point, Mage Damus, in the 70s. We got guys who are senators now from the 80s. Like across the board, there's all these Army wrestlers that I got to meet, that was exposed to. Half of them, I don't even know if their names exist or if they're out there, but those guys were living as hard as possible, and I got to see how they worked on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. And so I didn't need to look far for inspiration. Like it was there in front of me. And even outside of the wrestling community as well, like just being in the military community, some of the instructors that I had at West Point, I remember there was a random guy, Major Young, and he had what's called a triple stack. He went into Ranger School, Special Forces, and Sapper School. So like this is a hard dude. I remember doing workouts with him, and that's just a random guy at school. But there's a lot of personalities like that who are capable of not only executing like a Goggins and Jocko, but I also got to see them be incredible family people, or incredibly intelligent and diligent in their work. And so knowing that, being around that caliber of person, specifically in those formative years of being a young adult male, was really inspirational and helped me realize like I didn't need to go far to be inspired.
Well, I think it's so important as well, because I think so many people now get access online, but nothing beats in person. Like nothing beats being like surrounding yourself with somebody like Noah. Like how has that been for you? Like, being able to compete in a friendly way, but still, trying to better each other.
Yeah, that's been massive. Like I said, I've known him for almost 10 years at this point, and I've always learned really well from, the mentors that I've had in a close setting. And I've said this to people before. We had a documentary a while back, but I wouldn't know how to be a CrossFit Games athlete if it wasn't for Noah, and I wouldn't know how to be a fitness professional if it wasn't for him. And that's beyond the training. I think I had a decent understanding of how to train hard. Like that's honestly the easy part, but how do you train hard while also being a good partner? How do you train hard while being the person that the fans and other folks want you or expect you to be? All of those things are a lot less intuitive, and he's been excellent at all that stuff. So getting to be around, even my first time out here, just, seeing how he moved in the gym or how he approached his training, the intensity, and all of those things combined to be like, okay, here's a standard for, I want to treat my fans like Noah. I want to execute on my workouts like Noah. I want to be the type of significant other like Noah. And I've been a fan of his since I was in college. So I remember my roommate got me a t-shirt, and that was a huge deal to me. I wore a hole in this t-shirt because it was a Peak 360 t-shirt, this gym that we're at now. And I'd always looked up to him, but then getting the proximity made it to where I could see okay, here's a 24/7 view of how this guy lives his life. I can try to emulate it as best as possible. And our personalities are very different in a lot of ways, but I was able to learn and pick up a lot of the parts that I could pick up. And that made me way more successful than I would have been if I had to try to figure this stuff out on my own.
Wow. Okay. I mean, for me, it is super important. And I try and tell that to people all the time. Is online's great. You can pick up stuff from mentors and influence or whatever it is. But if you can meet people in person, have mentors in person, and really, take inspiration from people. Because for me, seeing is believing. When you see somebody do something, you can actually see how they're taking the steps to achieve those things.
Yep.
What's your opinion on then the people that we do get to see publicly? Because as well as especially special forces, it's quite a quiet thing. I guess it's against your nature to go on camera after having a career in that for a lot of guys.
Yeah.
How many people are we not seeing? How many of the guys are out there that are the real superheroes? We just don't hear
it is unbelievable. I tell people very frequently, even at school where I did well physically, I did not think I was that special of an athlete at school, because so many of these guys who ended up not choosing to go the route that I did and decided to go be awesome, join the Ranger Regiment or just go be awesome infantry officers or whatever it was that they were doing. Just the quality of folks on the Army wrestling team, but at West Point in general, made me think that I was just another guy to some degree. I was like, every school has probably plenty of these people. I think there's probably a good 10 to 15 people I know that if I'd switched spots with them and they decided they wanted to be professional fitness athletes, would have done a better job. There was a guy a year ahead of me who I was in the same weight class as. This guy never trained once, and he beat me on all of our physical fitness tests. He would go home all summer and just eat and just hang out, and he beat me out for the spot one time. And there's a bunch of guys like that on the wrestling team, and then you got the rugby teams got dudes like that, soccer teams got guys like that across the board, and then even random soldiers. I remember there's always a thing called the Iron Soldier Award, and so when you go to any school, they'll have some sort of physical evolution that determines who the Iron Soldier is, or the Iron Man. And I won it for all of my courses that I did, but there was one course that I took, and this guy was from Oklahoma. I only saw him eat cigarettes and drink Monsters, did not know a thing about nutrition, and he took it down to it was a very comprehensive test, very similar to you'd see in a fitness event where we did some short stuff, some long stuff, lifted, went all these things, and it went down to the last event out of maybe 10 or 12 with this dude. And this was, I think, I was a year out from the CrossFit Games, so I was still in amazing shape. This was just a guy. So I think there's a lot more talent than people know exists. It's just directed in other places, but especially in the military where the standard for performance is so high, it creates a lot of very, very special athletes and people who are capable of competing mentally, even if they never were all-American talents in high school or anything like that. They just know how to compete and push themselves in a way that leads to some pretty crazy outcomes. So there's a lot more folks out there. I don't think I'm that special at all. I just happened to be at the right place and the right time.
Wow. Okay. I mean, it's amazing to hear as well, because I think we get to see quite a limited group of people online, because I think it's almost against nature, and a lot of people don't veer off into sports like you have as well. So we don't get to hear you talk about your experience on camera and stuff. And I've always been curious. I'm sure there's many different David Goggins is out there, or all these
no
kind
idea.
of guys. Yeah. It's pretty crazy, man. Yeah,
it is. Even just from the guys that I've got to meet personally, and there's plenty of ladies who are in the same boat. There's just a lady who crushed one of my brother's classmates who just finished Best Ranger. You meet so many inspiring people, and I think that even if I don't always align or understand what those guys who represent the military are saying when they go out and present things a certain way, I think they represent very well because that attitude and the mindset that they have, if you're in the Jocko mindset of saying good and just dealing with situations, like that's an applicable thing. If you have that Goggins can't break me mindset, there's a ton of people who do that. They might not go on camera and talk about it, but that those people exist, especially at the highest levels of performance. And there's so many high performers. Like I know people who could fly helicopters like you wouldn't believe, and all the things that I got to see let you know that pretty much anything is possible if you decide to be fully focused on it for a long enough period of time. And that's what I always tell young folks when I'm talking to them. It's like, it's the consistency. Like nobody starts off special, but if you can be consistent enough where you are actually every minute of the day is a 1% gain, I think that's a little bit easier to visualize. Like that's how steep the curve can happen. Like it's 1% this minute, 1% the next minute. Every hour is blocked off towards, am I training? Am I recovering? Am I learning more about how to fly this platform? Like that sort of approach that a lot of people take in the military can make you so great at things, and you realize that you're capable of doing so much.
Like the success that you've had in sports and fitness and like all this kind of stuff. And I'm just curious, like if somebody was pursuing something that maybe was outside of that business, entrepreneurship, it could be sports as well, but like what would be the advice that would be applicable to anybody just in pursuit of their greatness?
I think for anyone in pursuit of their greatness, they have to be consistent and be patient. That combination of two things, undefeated. Because if you're consistent, you can't help but get better if you continue to put efforts in and learn from wins and failures. That consistency builds up on itself over time, and you have to have the patience to stay in the game long enough for that investment to begin to pay off. It's the same as if you put money into the stock market and you're getting a 7% return. That $10 is going to be I'm going to start this off 1070 next year, but if you wait for 50 years or whatever, it's going to be some giant number. And that same approach, I think, towards anything is how time in the market always beats time out of the market. So you got to be consistent, got to be patient, and you can make anything happen.
I love that. If the audience was to follow up from the conversation today, like where could they find out more about, especially the mindset stuff, like the stuff of inspiring people? Like where's the best place for them to go get inspired by some of the work you're putting out there?
I think the best way to get inspired is to go find the highest performer that you're able to talk to in whatever field. I feel like folks are always very generous with their time. If they know what it takes to get there, and you show that you're putting in the effort to improve on your own, people will always be willing to meet you along your journey. And the level of those people might differ, but you start with whatever level you can get to. You start with Alex Wirtz, the random guy who beat me up my freshman and sophomore year in wrestling. And then I get to wrestle with some of the guys that I wrestled with at school. And then all of a sudden I'm on the same mat as Kyle Snyder, who's Olympic gold medalist. Like it starts one place, and then you learn what you can, you improve your skills, you develop more abilities, and then you're able to move it to the next room. And when you move it to the next room, you do the same thing, but you have to continuously find and seek out the best person that you have proximity to learn from. And once you've learned from them and those skills have elevated you to where you can move into a new room, you'll meet a new slate of people, and you can continue to build from there. But just start wherever you're at. Find the strong guy at your gym and ask how they got that way, or find the fast guy at the local 5K, or the smartest teacher that you had, or any of those folks that you can get into contact with. If you know somebody, a family friend, she's a doctor, and you can talk to her about how they got that way, like that's where it starts, and then you build from there.
Where's the best place people can follow up and find from yourself? Like Instagram, is it YouTube?
I'm definitely mostly on Instagram. I don't do a ton of long form content.
You need to, man. You need to hear some of this on camera, man, on long form content.
Well, you got it done. So maybe I can learn. I'll learn from you now that I know a little bit more about how to set these things up and the type of questions I should be asking both myself and other people if I ever do something like this, and can build from there.
Thank you so much for today, man. I just think that idea of the inspiration and like inspiring people and all that kind of stuff, like obviously the physical feats that you're doing, I think is doing that completely. The physical manifestation of your body, I think does it for a lot of people as well. Like I think a lot of people are inspired by that and want to try and achieve something like that. But what we've spoken about today, I think is helpful. And I'm sure you probably sprinkle that into some of your content as well. I don't know, but
I generally, I guess maybe I don't ever think anyone's that interested in hearing what I have to say. I still, even though I have a lot of self-confidence in my work capacity, and everyone has some sort of imposter syndrome, but I know so many folks who are legitimately hard dudes. I think about guys who are better wrestlers than me. I think about some of the ladies I know who went to some of these schools and weren't afraid to go. So I'm just a guy who does burpees for a time. I might apply the lessons I learned from being lucky enough to be close to those guys and girls to like be good at doing that, but it's not that special. So I recommend they go to the experts. If they go to, read McChrystal's book and that's what gets them going, read that book. Maybe I'll have something to say if I feel like I've accomplished enough to talk about things, but I'm just a dude.
There you go. I love it. We'll finish on that, man. Appreciate it.
Sweet, man. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, man.